Hi, everyone. Hi, Eric. Hi, Caroline. Welcome to 12 Step Crashers podcast, episode number 5. Uh, Today, we're going to touch on a couple topics we never talked about on the podcast so far. So, very exciting. Uh, as you guys know, Eric and I come from a place of ignorance in our early recovery, especially when it touched 12 step, especially when it touched opiates. So, there's a lot of things as cocaine and addicts and alcoholics, what we know, that we don't know about. Like we've seen a lot of people that struggle with opiate addiction. We've seen a lot of people succeeding with 12 step, but those are things we don't have practical experience with. And today, the guests we have on the show do have a lot of experience with things that we know nothing about. So we are really excited to have you on the show, Caroline.
Thanks, Eric. So nice to meet you guys. Hello to everybody out there. My name is Caroline, and I'm an addict in recovery. Now I'm going to complete 8 years sober the next week. No, the other one, on July 25th. Yeah. So I've been using
that's
for
great.
about 25 years of my life. So I started really early on regular basis. I would say around 12 years old. And I quit. When I quit, I was 37, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, just like as we said yesterday, it was the age that we had to make a decision. The biggest dilemma. So I want to live or die.
Exactly. Yeah. So how old were you when you stopped using?
The first time I stopped using was around 37 or 38. I don't remember the exact age. Yeah. I don't remember the exact month I stopped. I don't even remember stopping. Like I said I needed help. I never went to get help, but I said I'm an alcoholic and I need help. And my ex at the time, my common law wife, I said she's leaving and I'm going to try and get better. I'm going to try and get clean. I don't remember the next 2 days. I quit cold turkey, but I don't remember nothing. And I don't remember going through DTs. I don't remember anything. I don't remember that switch over, but I remember it was a switch that went off. I said it out loud and I stopped. And it was around 37 or 38. Pretty sure it was 37. But then again, of course, I let a friend, I let myself be talked into hanging out with a friend, and he didn't like me, but I was sober, but I had kind of transitioned over to some pills, right? So it was no longer perfectly sober, but I liked it, but he didn't. So anyways,
so you were abstinent. You were abstinent and you relapsed. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And Eric, may I ask you what substance you went cold turkey on?
Cocaine and alcohol.
Okay. But you could have died.
When I relapsed, that was the two things I started on that night.
So go big or go home, and you didn't go home that night.
Yeah, it's just odd. Yeah, it seems to be that age, but I never, like most things, I never put any thought into it.
Yeah, not before getting sober.
Neither. Only this time do I take any reflection and any account and any responsibility for any choices I make now, and I ever did. But I never did that the last
Eric,
time.
Your 1 year anniversary date is on the 24th.
That's right.
Of July.
Yeah.
We almost have the same date as well.
Yeah, so we have to celebrate.
Yeah, ice cream or something, eh?
Yeah.
Yay, that'd be great.
Maybe I made a transfer in the sparkling water, but at least it won't ruin my family,
Yeah.
Yo, Bubbly will have to sponsor this show. We always drinking bubbly on every episode.
No, are you kidding me? This one is good. Yeah, the lime. I like the lime, but once it happened to me, the pineapple one, I took a sip and it reminded me like beer. I don't know why. So I'm not gonna take anymore. I don't know why. Yeah.
It was triggering.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I've been afraid so much since I quit that I don't even use non-alcoholic beverage like zero.
Me neither.
Yeah. And I got rid
How about
of
you,
all
Ed?
my, wine glasses and stuff. I gave everything to the
Yeah,
people
so
around me.
paraphernalia for alcohol.
Mm,
Yeah, I'm different than you guys. I live alone and I have alcohol in my house, but yeah, it's a matter of keeping myself in power against the substance. But
okay.
I have a weird relationship, I guess, to substance. For me, it's important to neutralize it so it doesn't have control over me. And as
Wow.
I keep just justifying myself to Eric, there's a corner store literally 50 meters away from my place that's open 24/7. And if I would like to drink alcohol at 3 a.m., he would sell it to me. Just invoice me tomorrow. So there's not a single point in time, any day, that I would not be able to drink if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I do have a beer in my fridge. I don't have a beer in my fridge because I placed it there. It's because a friend left it there back like in September last year, and it's still in the fridge. And I never think of it. I don't obsess over it. I just know it's there.
But it
Like,
must be past
anyways,
date. Anyway.
definitely. But the Pabst Blue Ribbon, is it ever good, even if it's fresh?
Time to taste it.
Yeah, that's not the point when you drink such exquisite nectar.
Yeah.
It's not for the taste.
It went down fast, very fast.
We might be triggering our audience a bit. But anyways, all that to say that we all have different relationship to substances. I would not recommend anybody do the things I do. It works for me, but it's definitely not a program. Don't put a risk situation in your house because I said so. Don't do that.
Yeah. Of course.
You're also God too.
Oh yeah, but that's another topic.
You
I hope
said
we
that
won't
many
touch
times.
on today.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
All right. Well, if you put me on the spot, Eric, I said in a pilot episode that in the context of 12-step, if I had to choose an higher power, that can be anything, right? But for me, in my spirituality, this shit is internal. Like it's a self-dialogue. So that's why I said in that very specific context that I would be God, which definitely does not align very well with the concept of surrendering and other important steps in the 12-step program. That being said, I am not delusional. I don't have a God complex. I'm definitely not God on any other framework of reference than that very specific topic. Thank you, Eric, for reminding the audience that I am indeed God.
Yes, and sometimes it can be really repulsive when you enter a meeting for the first time, people talking about God and stuff, especially when you're a theist. So, but in the big book, the only requirement to be member for the membership, the desire to stop using. It's the only requirement. So, and it says also it's the higher power that you choose. So, there is alternatives, thankfully, because how can I tell, I don't know, someone who sticks to dialectical materialism to choose a higher power? For everyone as their place in the meetings, I think, and thankfully it saved my life. But I am an atheist, and it's my stuff, my own personal stuff. It's working, so nobody has the right to, to criticize my way.
Yeah, 100%. Like the main thing is that it works for you, regardless of what other people can think or say about it. The fact is, it works for you. But I'm curious, did you start going to meetings before getting clean, or did that come after?
It came after my the first time I quit. I was 36, 37, something like that. I went into detox, and a friend of mine took me when I got out. She took me to a CA meeting, and I met cool people there, and I made friends with women with many years of sobriety. I really liked the first meeting I went, so I continued. So yeah, I had the chance that someone took me there because I wouldn't have went there by myself, you know. That wasn't my idea first. I thought I was going to be able to do it by myself alone, but I was wrong. Eventually, I relapsed, and for 6 months, and then I went to therapy, and I had to work on myself. I had to do more work to feel safe enough, and then I came out 8 years ago. All during the time of my relapse, I was still going to meetings because no one was going to reject me because I was on a relapse.
That's an interesting thing, perhaps in CA, in NA. I think the tolerance for people that are relapsing is very different than in AA. In AA, it's really like the shameful route. From what I've seen, from what I've heard, from what I've witnessed from my own two eyes, when you do relapse in AA, it's important to make a point that you're losing all of your chips, you're going back to day zero, and you must repent.
Even farther than that, I think we've witnessed it where we've seen people that have relapsed doing some kind of AA program. Let's not call it AA, but you know what I'm talking about. And it's their own shame, it's their own guilt that weighs on them most heavily.
Yeah, just like auto-flagellation, or you are a sinner, you repent, or but
it's coming.
Maybe
it's
it's
coming.
your perception, but what I've seen when you relapse, people come forward to help you and support you. That's what I felt. Oh my God, my cats! They want to come back inside. And of course, there were little, evolutions since about the literature, since the evangelical origin of the AA big book in the 30s. So it looks like, there is of course, Judeo-Christian heritage coming from it. So. Yeah, for me, it was really, really repulsive. But you have to, because there's so many good things in it, in the steps and in the traditions, because you have to work on yourself. But as I said in the little yellow book, there are alternatives of the steps where you have to also point out your qualities and the good behaviors that you have, It's not only...
so when you do your inventory, it's not all the negative things about you.
Yeah.
There's also your qualities and abilities.
Yeah. In the yellow book, but it's a suggestion. But this book has been, they had the permission from the AA World Services to publish, to print it, but AA doesn't approve or disapprove. They just gave the permission in the spirit of the third, tradition, that the only requirement to be member is the desire to quit using. So they're
coherent with their positioning that they remain neutral regarding external activities that doesn't directly relates to the fellowship. So they don't have an opinion about other things.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
They don't have an opinion also about your religious beliefs or
lack thereof.
Yeah.
The most important.
That's bad, Eric.
It's
you are the devil. Don't say you don't have a religion.
What did you say?
What is it?
I'm just joking, but I said if you don't have a religion, then that's not okay. But I'm kidding.
So while I was in my therapy with my how do you say your your
Therapist.
yeah, a therapist. Yeah, she told me, yeah, but I don't believe in God, I'm a theist. Yeah, but just pretend you believe in God and you'll see it will work. But I told her earlier, you told me to be 100% honest. So now you want me to pretend, there were inconsistencies.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
relate with that like so much.
So I
Eric and
couldn't
I,
pretend,
I've
but
mentioned to you,
I make my inventory, and you can make. There are also many good things like making amends to people that you have hurt, or it's not bad.
definitely not bad. I think, well, and Eric, we were on the way back from Ottawa, and I was looking up like the Ten Commandments and the 12 traditions, and we were actually just
The Ten Commandments. You are
making
talking
the
about the Bible now. The
yeah,
Old
no, the
Testament.
Torah actually. So yeah, yes. We went a bit far in the rabbit hole, but the point we were trying to make is that regardless that you are in a fellowship or you are in a church or you practice religion on your own, the common denominator between all this is discipline and a way of life that you choose to respect and you don't want to for me it's a bit different than your core values because your core values will not fluctuate over the time based on the religion you choose to adhere to. But uh, I think that that's where most people find that solution like 12 step works is that if you've lost your way, you never really add your own path in life, then this is definitely one that works, right? If you respect the tradition, you practice it every day, as opposed to just living a soulless life. Definitely, it has all of the chances in the world that it will be working. Just like we see redemption for prisoners in prison, that they become, for lack of better words, God freaks. But like that's a really honest thing that like they never knew religion, and rather it is Islam or Judaism or Christianity. It doesn't really matter. But they find God in prison, and it changed their entire life, right? So I guess that it depends on where you come from. Eric and I have a different but pretty solid religious background from
Yeah.
our younger age, before we
Okay.
were even addicts. Me, it's not only repulsive; it's a bit traumatic. I am not like threatened or whatever, but I'm unable to connect with, especially like 12 step is very entry level spirituality. It's as accessible for anybody, any religion. It really just like, do you want to be a decent human being?
Yeah, but you know what transpires from method? It's always the fellowship, to share experiences, also be able to listen to other people and get listened to, and to give back
Yeah.
to other, helping others. It has been proven that it works, in many, many fields of mental illnesses and, other situations. It's to
Well,
share
grief
the
support group.
experiences with
Just grief
people who
support
can
groups are really
understand
big.
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
and essentially
alone,
it's simple. If you're not alone and you have somebody that can relate to you, that you can
yeah.
speak to,
Mhm.
definitely it's good for your mental health. It's good for your potential to get better, as
Yeah.
opposed to like speaking with a therapist is essential, but that's only what, one, if you're lucky, 2 hours in your week. There's a lot of other hours in that week where you're gonna struggle having a support system and peers you can rely on, and vice versa. For me, being dependable, so being the person that gives support, is also a very important aspect in my recovery.
Yeah. It's what keeps you sober by helping others. That's what works for me, but maybe not to everybody, but it works for me.
And your own recipe is yours, and it works. So that's great.
Yeah.
Caro, you've mentioned you started using at the age of 12. Perhaps we can do a little time travel.
Okay. Yeah, I started on regular basis. I was 12, but the first time I tried alcohol, I was 5 years old, and I do remember until today. That was 40 years ago, because my parents, they were party animal, and they were also addicts, and they had friends where we went over on the weekends while they were partying. But the kids were we were like, they weren't like taking care or having an eye on us, so we were able to do whatever we wanted to. Also going to bed at 4 a.m. at 5 years old, so they were always plenty of booze. So we went upstairs to have a bottle. My good friend, she was 4 years old and I was 5. So we went to the basement, and when I tried, I automatically fell in love with the sensation, with the feeling in my legs. And I think I've been born with anxiety. I don't know, but as I remember, I always been anxious. That was the first time it happened while I was young. Sometimes going into the fridge and having a cup of white wine. I was still a kid, but my parents, they were struggling a lot, because we have lost a sister, by she passed when she was 4 years old. Back in the day, there were no cure for leukemia, and they were at this time, when she passed, the shit went down between my parents, so they start fighting. Where I'm from, everybody has guns for hunting. So sometimes it happened during the night, waking up, hearing them fighting, and my dad taking the rifle, and threatening my mom with the rifle. What
Ouch.
I've learned at this time, the best thing to do was to hide, under my bed, or going outside running during the night, or in my closet. So, my mom, she wasn't from Saguenay. She was from Nova Scotia. So she didn't have any family in Saguenay. And back in these days, women, when they were victims of violence, they didn't have any way to get out. No money, no diploma, and what can you do? So she tolerated it for many, many years. And one day she decided to put my dad outside, So I was happy to see them, witness them having a divorce and stuff. I was happy, because now I would be able to sleep and without any fights and stuff. During those years, after my sister passed, my mom, with the passing of my sister, and also all the violence she endured, she was having psychosis. So that was kind of a normal thing to get there at the hospital to visit her. So you see where you don't see beautiful things.
Yeah. And how old were you when they actually had the divorce?
I was around 8 or 9. Yeah. And, by the time, my mom put my dad away, weeks after, he went into rehab. So I remember visiting him also at the rehab. But they never came back together. And my dad, sadly, he never seeked for professional help or any fellowship. He just stayed like the way he was, but, abstinent. He was a dry alcoholic. So with the same behaviors. Yeah. So, but he stayed clean for 13 years. But, by the age of, I was still living with my mother, I think, but she went into another psychosis. And I know that after that, she didn't even remember what happened, but I know that my mom loved us, a lot because she was staying and with my sister and I when all of her family was living. But one night, I was able to see the changing in her mood and behaviors. I was kind of stressed, and I was looking at her, what she was doing. I remember that night, I told myself it would be better if I sleep with her in her bedroom to see if she does something weird, or maybe it could be better if I go to my bedroom with my sister. But if I do so, I won't be able to watch her and what she's doing. I was 8 or 9. That's a big stress to put on a kid. And the day after, but she was drinking, but when she wasn't, she was the best mom in the world. But when she was drinking, I never, received any kind of violence from my parents. But sometimes they weren't present, emotionally for us. And sometimes just the basic things like keep the house clean and taking a bath every day. But yeah, they weren't looking after us all the time. But I start using that was, around that time on regular basis. Where I'm from, it's a small village, so we didn't have much to do. So my friends and I were drinking mostly every weekend. And I remember also in the 6th grade, at school when they talk to us about drugs, different drugs, and what was the feeling and stuff. They were trying to do prevention, but they weren't talking about, emotional distress, or they weren't, talking about what comes around the using. My friend and I wanted to try. We had a friend. She was older than us. We asked her to find some hashish because we wanted to try it. We were in this, we were 11 or 12, no, 11 years old. Yeah. I was already fucked up, I wanted to try all of these drugs that they were presenting, at school. So then I tried, hashish and LSD, PCP, that what we call the mescaline, but it wasn't mescaline at all. It was only PCP. And during those years, I loved all kind of drugs except for the weed. As I told you yesterday, Evric, I was becoming always paranoid on weed. So at the age of 15, I decided that it was a fucked up drug. I was under control with LSD and PCP. That was better for me than weed. All the years that I've been using alcohol was always there. My favorite substance switched over the years. It switched from PCP to cocaine, and then speed, ecstasy, and all kind of stuff. Also opioids, like we talked earlier. And what else? Yeah, I smoked crack, and I was in denial because every time I stopped using one drug, I was telling myself I am in control. I can stop using whenever I want, but I was still drinking and using other drugs. Yeah. And then
I can use something else.
exactly. I told you earlier that my dad quit drinking for 13 years or so. And he had a girlfriend, but she dropped him. And then he relapsed, and he started making, bad choices. He got arrested, and he went in front of the judge, and he went to another rehab. So, but he never worked on himself. All my life, I've seen him like existing, but not living. He wasn't happy at all or seeking for. And then he hung himself into rehab. So that's how he passed.
Mm.
So, yeah.
That's how you
But
became an
I've
orphan.
continued using, and we have lost many of our friends from Saguenay, from OD, suicide, and stuff like that. It's insane. You see your friends passing away. You keep on using, like if there were no danger at all.
Yeah, like it won't happen to you. They just use too much. They were too far gone, but you're not. Yeah, I've been there as well. I understand.
We should have stopped this and did this instead.
Judge the dead instead of acknowledging it might be you.
Yeah, you can be next. And nowadays, it's so dangerous to have a relapse, with the fentanyl and everything.
Yeah, like relapsing on cocaine for me, like legit with the quantity of fentanyl there is in cocaine today, that's a very big death threat. So it's not only opioid users anymore, and they actually find trace of fentanyl in weed if you buy your weed on the street. So that's getting quite crazy. How everything is laced with fentanyl. But speaking of opioids, Karen, how did you actually graduated from cocaine to opioids? How did that?
To opioids, but I used all my life except during my 2 pregnancies. I was able to quit because it wasn't for me; it was for my babies. That was easier. Quitting for another human being. But the first I had to take opioids. I was 18 years old, but it was a prescription. And when the doctor tell you, please don't drink with this medication, but I just wanted to try, to drink more. Do the opposite, so I can get high. I'm going to drink more. And I like it, but, when the medication, the prescription ended, I got off it easily. But I start using, that was opioids. That was in 2009. Because I had problem with my on my back, with again prescription, but I couldn't stop and start using more and buying from the streets, and that's it. So I used how many years? I don't remember, but I remember that was maybe 3 years. 3 years? Yeah, 3 years. I used opioids for 3 years, and I wanted to quit, but I did it cold turkey style. I didn't want to take methadone or other medication. I wanted to be free, but using cocaine and booze. Here you go, the logical stuff. And I went into a nightmare for I don't know, maybe about 10 days or something like that. You start like feeling really, really anxious with nausea after you sweat a lot, and then the cramps everywhere. I just wanted to throw myself in the front of a truck or a 53 feet, big truck, because, it was a nightmare, but I did it. But there weren't any danger of dying from doing it cold turkey. But when I quit using alcohol, that was different. I had to do it with medical supervision because I had to take a medication for not throwing up and having seizures, and it was in therapy that because the time I went into detox, I went for cocaine, and then on my relapse, I went to hospital a few times, and then I was afraid of passing, because I have kids. So I decided that on my relapse, I'm gonna take only alcohol, but I developed, addiction really quickly. Really, that went really quick. Only few months. And then I had to drink not past 11 o'clock in the morning because I would throw up and shaking and sweating and stuff. And I remember calling my doctor, my specialist, and telling her, I want to quit drinking. I need medication. So she prescribed me benzo. So I didn't quit. I used benzo with alcohol. When I was, I started to wake up in ditches and stuff, and in the corner of, I live in Montreal, so in my neighborhood, it's not good to sleep on the sidewalk. It could happen anything to you during the time. It's not safe. So yeah, that's when I decided to go into therapy. And that was the last. That's why I've chosen that therapy based on the 12 steps. I wanted to start working on myself because I wanted to quit for good. And when I got out, I went to see my doctor because I have to have a blood work, stuff like that, to make sure I was okay. I was losing my hair. I had a B12 vitamin deficiency, arrhythmia, heartburn. Those are the consequences of using, but at least I'm still alive. So I'm trying to be a better person, the best mom for my kids, and they are proud of me. Yeah, they're proud.
I hope you are proud of yourself.
Yes, I am. Yes, I need professional help like a psychologist, also social worker. I took all the resources that I could get, really, and also for my oldest son because he suffered from my using my addiction. So he went to see a psychologist for few years. He also had a social worker. I really wanted him to have a secure place to talk about, his personal traumas and stuff. And today he's doing good. Yeah. And I wanted to make different than my parents because my dad, I remember when he quit, I wanted to talk about what had happened when he was drinking, and he always refused to talk about the past. So I couldn't, heal somehow. So I just wanted to do different. And as both my parents, passed from addiction. So I had a moment, a second of lucidity. I don't know. Oh God, I need to stay alive for my kids because I did it for my kids first, but now I'm happy to take care of myself, It's by doing small things that I get proud of that my self-esteem came back. But again, last winter I asked to see a psychologist again because I have to work on my traumas because, also, I talked about my dad who was violent when I was a kid, but I have experienced also, violence with both dads of my kids, so physical and psychological. I know I've tried to have a relationship after, but I think I'm still afraid and sometimes panic. So I have to work on it. Yeah, I'm PTSD.
It really is admirable of you because, as you've named, you don't want to repeat the cycles, breaking the generational trauma from what you've suffered from your parents' addiction, not passing it over to your children. I believe that's the best gift we can give our kids as addicts. Is actually taking care of us, taking care of them like we should have been, because it's never too late.
I said it's never too soon. Also,
I'll,
It's never
I'll
too late.
definitely never too
Yeah,
soon.
yeah,
Yeah. Yes, that's true as well. What I meant is that, well, personally, I would spend my entire life in therapy. I believe
yeah. Me
like
too.
there will never be
Yeah,
a point where I'm going to be fixed, right? It's not a
yeah.
goal. I don't want to be fixed,
We're
but I can
kind
always
of
improve
broken, but not
the person
not
I am.
not broken not broken like trash. We're
Mhm.
still human beings, and we can improve, get better. So it feels good to get better, to work on ourselves. I like it.
Well,
And I was
I
afraid to
heard.
lose my psychologist, but he reassured me 2 weeks ago that he's going to keep seeing me at the clinic, because I was assigned, I think, 12 appointments, but it wasn't enough. So he reassured me that he was still seeing me. So I was relieved. And also I had to,
That's cool.
while I was in rehab, my therapist told me I must have something, but to wait a year or so before getting evaluated. And people around me, also in the meetings and recovery, we talk a lot about emotions, trying to identify emotion. For me, it was the hardest, and also seeing emotions on other people's faces. I realized that I wasn't able to read the room. I went for an
Hmm.
evaluation, and I am autistic. So it helped me in a way I can know my limits and stop trying to change some behaviors that I cannot change. So,
Hmm.
and respect my limits. Yeah, and that's it.
Knowing you're autistic, like changing certain behaviors would be just masking, or like it would be painful for you to just
Yeah,
do the behaviors that society expect of you, but actually it's not who you are, as opposed to fixing behaviors that are problematic and that you
yeah, just
developed as an addict or
accepting
whatnot.
that I'm this way. So, and respecting
Hmm.
myself this way also. Respecting my limits
That's great.
because
That's
for,
something that a
I
lot of
just,
addicts don't like to believe. Limits.
sorry?
Yeah,
You have no
we didn't
limit.
have limits when we were in active use.
No, 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 but cocaine helped me to socialize, alcohol too. But that's weird because opioids, man, I had the effect. The effect was like giving me a high, just like almost cocaine. I don't know. But it helped me to socialize with my anxiety and stuff. But yeah, we had no limit. We had no limit.
You were about to say something, Eric, I think.
Well, I lost track of what I was going to say, but I would say I do remember one thing I wanted to say is that it seems like, Caroline, that your journey is you've been looking to improve yourself for a long time, and it seems like every step was just a little closer to where you wanted to go. And
Yeah,
when I listen to your story, all I hear is self improvement. That's all I hear.
Mhm.
I mean, you start coming from your background and the distance that you and the amount of journey that you've covered now. You really should be proud because you come from so far and you did a lot of it alone. But you were what I find remarkable is you were aware enough to use everything, every tool, every system in place to
yeah,
maximize getting to know yourself and your therapy, your psychologist, detox, whatever it was. And despite the maintenance drugs that we all do
yeah.
along the way, you were always looking for yourself. It seems like.
Yeah, somehow
I don't know if you agree.
I had the willing, maybe a little bit of self-love enough to get better.
Mhm.
That was enough
And
with the love of my kids too, but I think I had a
yeah,
small amount of self-love enough to wanting to get better. Yeah.
I think as parents, when we are totally despair and we don't really have reason to move forward, we find a reason in the fact that some people depend on us. Our kids, like,
Yeah.
they need us. So, and I remember so many times, like in active addiction, it was really bad. Like I would sleep maybe 1 or 2 hours, but I would be awake and I would do my job as a dad 2 hours later
Yeah, me
because
too. Yeah.
I
Yes, like
I have to. So
keeping the
therefore, I
house
do it.
clean. For me, I've been traumatized so much about the making my toast in the morning before going to school, between empty bottles and ashtrays full of cigarettes. So I didn't want my kids to
Hmm.
going through that. I was almost doing the same, but my kids never. They took a bath every single day. They had warm meals and the house was clean, but I wasn't present enough emotionally for them. Yeah, that's what makes the difference today. So
Yeah,
today we are
and
able to spend good time together, better quality of time, I would say. Yeah, and we find happiness in small things that we do together.
yeah,
And
I'm really
I
early
try
in my
to.
recovery, but the small things, the little things about life that we tend to oversee when we are in active use, this is also the things that makes me really happy. Just looking at the
Yeah.
sun setting, or like paying attention to the sounds of nature. Those things that you never do when you're high out of your fucking mind on
No.
cocaine or whatnot. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Hearing the birds in the morning on cocaine is kind
Ah,
of a nightmare because it reminds you
what's
haven't
worse
slept.
than this? Worse than hearing the birds in the morning when the sky starts to get blue and the lights comes up. Oh my god! I don't have to
What have I done
experience
again?
that anymore. I find happiness in finding rocks when I go. I love to play outside. And that's what I've discovered. That's what I was loving when I was a kid, and now I still love it. Doing things like this, like playing outside.
That's
Yes.
cool. You're reconnecting with your inner child and the things you left aside when you were using. I have a question for you because 8 years a long time. Was it difficult at
It
some
went so
point? Did,
fast.
did you fear
I
whatnot?
was so afraid of relapsing in the first 2 years. I didn't went to any bar or shows. When I was meeting people, it was always for brunch, having a coffee. As I said, I gave away all my wine glasses and stuff. Still today, not that I'm afraid to, but I have to keep in mind that my brain can switch and makes me believe that I can have only a drink for a little bit. Maybe I'll be able, but if there were a cure for it, I wouldn't want to going back drinking and using because I want to keep my body healthy because I have fat liver and stuff like that. I don't want to break my body anymore, and I don't miss drinking or using. No, I'm happy this way. Even for a
That's
million
interesting.
dollar, for having a sip of beer, take that sip even for $1 million. And who wants to
And
give
that
me one
speaks
million
about
for
your
a sip of
sobriety.
beer, anyways? Well,
Yeah, yeah, that
yeah.
as well. It probably won't happen. I mean, it's interesting because like it reminds me. Today I was in a meeting and an old timer with maybe something like 20 years sobriety. You can feel it, not that he's still white knuckling, but he said like, and he named his drink of choice, but I think was whiskey on the rocks with 7 Up or
Mhm.
whatever that was. But he described it with his eye like glowing. It's like, if I could, I would. And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if you can spend 20 years
No, if
wishing
I
you
could,
would
I
drink.
wouldn't.
For
No,
me,
I don't
like
want to.
like I haven't wanted to have a drink since getting clean. Like it
No.
did not happen, not a single time. I'm
Yeah,
actually
me
really
neither.
repulsed by the
What a
idea.
chance! What a chance for not feeding cravings. Because it's
Hmm.
it's crazy. You struggle against yourself. That's so powerful. the cravings. The first time I quit, when I went into detox, I spent every single day with cravings. I spent 4 months and a half with craving, and that was hurting so much. That was the first time, I was abstinent, but the suffering was so intense. Plus the cravings, man. Oh, that was hard as fuck. Yeah. So you, Eric, did you have cravings, or do you crave sometimes?
The first time or this time?
First.
The first time. When I stopped the first time, like I said, the first time I stopped like that, and I never thought about it again, and I never had a craving. And the same thing this time in a way. What I have figured out, it's if my mind stays positive, I never get that. What my mind likes to do is the minute I have anxiety or I'm confronted in a dramatic situation where I have to kind of fight and flight, that's where it could get tricky. My drinking anyways, not sure about my substance abuse. My drinking is definitely emotion-based. It is an escape, it is a relief, and it's a liquid courage is what it is. But it's not a craving. When I stopped the first time for 3 years, I walked into bars. I was in bars all the time. I was drinking water. I was with my friends. I used to drive them home. And then for a while I was on speed, but I was just drinking water. And I would still drive my friends home. I never felt like drinking. Ever. It never occurred to me. I stopped. It's the same thing with the minute I detox, I'm in a positive frame of mind. So what I have to watch out for always is my, for lack of a better word, my mood. Apparently, if I get slightly depressed, my mind decides I'm depressed. It just takes over.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I don't take any pills or anything for depression. I've never been diagnosed for any kind of depression because I snap out of it just as fast too. There's something very strange about my brain I still haven't figured out. It's like why I don't make promises, because if I say a promise, there's not a fucking chance in hell I'll break it. So I don't make promises usually because it will play with me. That's why I when I do say things, I say them out loud, and that's why I believe sharing in groups or in therapy is so pertinent to my recovery, because if I say something out loud, it's like I manifest it. So for me, it's incredibly important that I never stop talking, because what I've realized is when I shut up, I'm not happy.
It's important really to talk. Yeah.
About anything and everything, but I need not to. I absolutely cannot shut up.
And that's interesting because before going to rehab, we were, at least for myself, I have never been able to talk about any of my problem. But I was the best listener. No, I was listening to find solutions. So I didn't know what it was to be an active listener and actually just air out somebody without trying to fix their problem or, tell them what to do. Because I thought that was what communication was. You give me something, I give you a solution, au revoir. That used to be how I would interact with all of my friends.
Maybe
people pleasing, of course. So people pleasing is what it is, but actually the ability to express how I'm feeling and that I'm having a bad day, it really came in therapy. 37-year-old, I'm learning stuff that I should have learned at like 8-year-old.
What? At 5?
5-year-old? Okay, 5.
Yeah, 5.
No.
Okay.
5.
Maybe you were a good listener, so you didn't have to talk about your stuff too.
That was it. I was addicted to other people's problem. Other people's problem kept me over mine. Yeah.
I think talking is the key, because for sure it's something that we were not used to, talk about our emotions, and also when you do good stuff too, say with the good and the bad stuff that's happening. It's really, really important, as I said, to surround yourself with people who can support you, because we have to talk about our shit. And also because if we isolate ourselves, our mind and perception get also fucked up. If I isolate myself, I'm going to get in a negative mood. And also when I was talking about perceptions, it's the way that you can validate with your surrounding. Because sometimes you get too far, we are good people to make scenarios also. I'm a good scenarist,
And when you're, a good friend of ours keeps saying, like, I have a thinking problem more than a drug problem. And that's true. If you leave me alone for too long, I can think of all the bad things and it's gonna make me crazy. But that doesn't happen when I open my mouth. When I talk about it, I kind of make sense of it. But if I'm alone with it, I'm unable to make sense of anything. So communication is still to this day essential every day. Go ahead, Eric.
Now, the one thing, I don't figure out a lot of things very often, but for me, what I have noticed is kind of what you were talking about. And now my therapies are once a week. So, like, I had it today. Now, ironically, I didn't think there was that much to talk about today. But this is the thing about therapy is actualizing, putting it into context, and then her with the feedback of how did that make you feel? How were you feeling at this person at this time? The threads, all the threads that you have in your brain when you sit alone and you're isolating, or when you're thinking, or when the scenarios come, all that stuff, when you have to verbalize it and explain it to somebody else, that's when all the tumblers fall. And you go, okay, that's why my brain went here. That's why I didn't sleep well that night. And then this happened because of that, because I didn't sleep well. And now this happened. And everything just makes sense when you're done. And it takes 55 minutes, right? So there's nothing, it's not that what we're thinking is necessarily wrong, is that we don't have the method to process it alone. It's in speaking to others, speaking to a therapist, or speaking even amongst a group, where you might not be guided, so you're not going to quite get to where you're getting, like in therapy. But just the simple act of trying to explain what you're feeling or thinking to another person, like I've often said, when you share, you might come in with 100-pound weight on your chest. When you leave, it's going to be 90 pounds lighter, right? I've often said that.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I believe.
Yes.
Is that you relieve such a weight by getting out what you were thinking for whatever reason.
And that's the point, right?
In your groups.
It's not about having a solution for your problem. Your problem is not solved, but you came clean about it. You have, however, the number of people, let's say for us, it's 30 people on average in our groups that listen and support you. And crosstalk is also encouraged in our group. So you get a lot of support, to say the least. But nobody's there, oh, you should do this, you should do that, or if I would be you. No, nobody's into solution mode. But as soon as I speak about it, I feel it automatically better.
Even as soon as you speak about it,
magical.
And it's when you talk about it, you realize so much things, during the time that, it makes you realize stuff, and also make the point of what you have achieved, or this is the way I see it. Just like in the meetings when you are asked to share, each time you share, it can be different because as a human being, you tend to, comment tu dis en anglais, evolve. Yeah, we evolve, So it makes you realize how much you evolved, and that's interesting. Yeah. But in groups, yeah, as you said, Eric, you don't have the guidance, but at least it helps, to just exercise, because for
Exactly.
myself, I never
Yeah, that's the good
was
word.
able to talk about my stuff, before, before 37 years, I wasn't able to talk about my stuff to no one. So that's something new. Years,
Yeah.
but that's something new, that's only 8 years in 45 years. Yeah, I feel like a kid sometimes.
Every day.
Carolyn, are the steps they're not the same steps as AA then, because there's clearly steps in AA where they want you to surrender and
Yeah.
to turn
But
your
she
will
does
over.
CA.
Yes,
She does CA, so that's the same.
CA, that's the same program. That's the same steps. I do CA, but I had to adapt myself for
That's what I was getting at.
the belief, because I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. Even if I try, there's nothing I can do. For myself, I had to be consistent with myself. So they are alternatives to the regular steps. There is many literature about the topic, There is one that I want to get. That's one from Jeff Munn. The title is Staying Sober Without God, Practical 12 Steps to Long-Term Recovery from Alcoholism and Addictions. And it was published in 2019. If someone out there ever read this book, I would love to know more about it. I want to buy it, because I feel curious, but you can find other books online, just like the Yellow Book. The Alternative 12 Steps Secular Guide to Recovery by Martha Cleveland. And here in Quebec, in Montreal, I know these people. It has been translated by Roger and Louis. because there is a secular and agnostic meeting here in Montreal. That's where I bought the book. I think we can buy it online, but I don't know where. But I took it in the secular meeting. Yeah, that's not big.
I might have to pay that place a visit. Caroline, I'm
Yes.
curious. Have you ever heard of Stoicism, or was the only alternative you heard of or 12 steps?
This one for the 12 steps is the only one, but I never heard about other fellowship
It's
until
not a
now.
fellowship.
Stoicism is like the base belief in ancient Greece that actually is the root of psychology and religion today.
Okay, yeah.
But
So why
and
did you ask me
you never
that?
heard about smart recovery. You never heard about smart recovery either, right? In your
Program
No.
anyway.
No.
attempt to get clean. And it's fascinating because smart recovery started early in the East, and it's just beginning to be heard of in Quebec right now.
Okay.
But it's big.
CBT therapy.
Yes. So cognitivo-comportamental behavioral therapy and dialectic as well, DBT.
Dialectic also.
And what's REBT? Responsive emotive behavior therapy. REBT.
That's it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I nailed it.
Okay.
yeah.
I always have trouble with that one.
So basically,
So that's where you
smart
guys,
the program.
What?
That's the program we've got lucky to find, and it's science based. It's replicable. You can actually look at matrix, what works, what doesn't. Like for my analytical brain, it was really helping that I could rely on such a program. And why I said, like earlier in the beginning of the podcast, like I am God and I could never surrender to something else, is I did surrender all right. But for me, that was acceptance. I surrendered to the fact that I need help. And that's enough surrendering for me, because when I stepped foot in the rehab, the first thing I felt is being empowered. I was not powerless, and I never felt powerless since getting clean. I am the one making the choice every morning.
Yeah.
Today, I am not using, and this makes me happy. This is my mantra. This is the first thing I tell to myself when I wake up in the morning. I am not miserable. I am not powerless. And I am convinced that if I would have to adhere to a program that tells me I'm powerless and miserable, I'd probably not be clean today. That's me, right?
You're not alone. And I don't surrender to shit anymore. We've already had that conversation. Last thing I surrendered to took away a good 13 years of my life.
And it's called alcohol.
That's right.
Yes. But all that to say, though, that personally, I go into 12-step meetings. I am in 12-step discussions on the internet because I'm curious about recovery. I'm curious about what works for others. And I definitely don't see my program as the only one that works. I know that a lot of steppers do believe that the only way is their way. But again,
maybe. Yeah, but maybe that. But they believe that's the only way, it's their way for themselves. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. That's the difference between having a program that is
Wait a sec.
it's faith-based, right? They have to believe. They have to believe it.
That's what I was going to say. They're coming at it from a faith angle, not a recovery angle when they do that. That's the difference when you have that group that is that way. I'm not
But that's why I wanted to have Caroline on the podcast for quite a while, because you did the 12-step program, you got clean in the public system, but you are self-improving. And Eric mentioned it. Even when you are in active use, like your path, clearly it's obvious, is about improving yourself along the way. I was referring to one person that is an old-timer earlier, but there's thousands of people like that. They have 10, 20, 30 years of sobriety, but it feels like they are still at day one from a healing perspective. And that person, like, it's 20 years sober, but like he relapsed maybe 20 times before he actually got to this. And I'm not judging at all. I'm just really observing.
He was
It's
an
not
old-timer.
everybody that actually
Sorry, he was a stepper, or he was
Yes, an old timer in 12 step. Yes, but yeah, if, I don't know if it's the fellowship that kind of does that, keep you in the like you reach a certain level, like you're I don't know, made it to 12 step, the 12th step, and that's it. You're not
Oh
evolving
no, you have
anymore.
to
You're not
apply
being of service.
no the step.
I know theoretically the book doesn't say that, but I feel a lot of people have that as a program because it's painful to hear them share sometimes because they're like, well, yeah, I can understand what you're saying coming from somebody that has 1 month of sobriety and is still actually trying to find a way not to, like, you know, get back to it. But it really feels like, my name is blah, blah. I'm a miserable addict. And, like, it's very negative all the time. And
Okay.
for me, it's fascinating how you actually spend 20 years putting yourself down every fucking day in a meeting. That hurts my mind, actually.
I think
And I'm not generalizing.
I can speak to my meetings in Valleyfield. I've told you this before. The meetings that I've been to, I've attended about 15 AA meetings here in Valleyfield, and I don't feel anything when I go there. I mean, what I take out of it is some people's shares, but otherwise than that, there's no fellowship there. I've mentioned this before. I've been to 15 meetings. I've heard 3 of the people's story twice. All right, so almost nobody really wants to share. There's a lot of people that I see at these meetings that are there all the time in the same meeting when I go. They just sit there and they listen very solemnly. They answer the person's name, which I can't do. I can't do that. Even if I wanted to, I can't be. I'm not. I can't do that. But these people referred to them like people at my work. They show up, they punch the clock, they wait for the clock to shift in, and they punch out. They're not there for anything else. And this is the same thing.
Back to religion, it's like the people that are at the church, but they don't actively practice Christianity or Catholicism. Like they are at the church every Sunday, but they watch the clock because the game's about to start. It feels, at least physically, in and maybe I got unlucky, but as you've mentioned, Eric, a lot of people are there like it needs to end. Like there's nothing fun there.
Also not everybody's doing the steps. So
go ahead, Calvin.
Not everybody's doing the steps. These are suggestions, but not everybody's doing them. And the steps, it's not that you make 1 to 12 and then you're done. You have to apply them, on the daily basis, doing your best to help another one or making amends right on the time that I realize that I've hurt someone, It's not like you meet them once in your life and you're done, but it depends also on, in the meetings you can meet people from many, many different backgrounds, and not everyone is willing to seek psychological help or take medication, or when you like your group, is that like you choose to go to therapy and they present you that specific program, or I don't totally understand where you guys.
Okay, so the rehab facility we went is a private rehab called Heritage, and yeah, well, it could be worse. There's some rehabs that are 3 or 4 times more expensive than the one we had. So the price we paid, I believe, is very reasonable for the services we had.
How much you paid?
But it was $13K back then. Okay. It may have been increasing because of inflation, but $13K is. I'm making my last payment in 2 months, by the way, because I had to finance that. All that to say that I was shopping around. Actually, I had a friend of mine shopping around for me because I was unable to use a computer. I was that far gone, especially seeking resources for myself. it's that not something I was capable of doing. But I knew my criteria because I already attended a few AA meetings. I was actively listening to podcasts about sobriety, and I did that for quite some time while snorting cocaine all night. And I have listened to a lot of things that mention alternative to 12 step. I believe rational recovery, but that guy's well, it's all about hatred of 12 steps. I was like, well, I'm not sure that that's necessarily what I'm looking for. I don't hate them. It just doesn't work for me. So basically it was like, find me a place. I'll pay whatever fucking price. I will go anywhere. I'll surrender to your decision where I'm going to be going to rehab, but it cannot be 12 step. I cannot be feeling like I'm in a cage, and I need to be the one responsible for my success. So those were my three criteria. And this is why Heritage was the place that was referred to me. And Eric has a similar story as well. It was his daughter that took care of the shopping around. But the program Smart Recovery existed only 2 rehabs in Canada. There's Heritage in Quebec, in Huntingdon, and there's Searidge, which is a sister company in Nova Scotia. And that's it. There might be others. There might be others, but I haven't found any looking for anywhere in Canada. I was ready to go anywhere in Canada. I only find this one that actually is specifically Smart Recovery certified. And Smart Recovery, as I said, it's not new. It started in the early 80s as a science-based agnostic recovery path. It has 4 steps only. Not really steps, it's phases, I would say, phases of recovery. And there's several tools in each of those phases. But essentially, that's just CBT applied, like disputing irrational beliefs, doing a cost-benefit analysis before making a decision.
Emotional management.
Emotional management, emotional processing, setting boundaries, the concept of the hula hoop, like what's my private zone and who can step in it. You know, those are things that I believe should be taught to children age
to everyone.
5 or 8. Yeah, that should be like in school system, because I might not have been an addict if I would have learned how to manage my emotion.
Well, just to have the awareness.
Time. Yes, if I had the self-awareness as well. And I say that Smart Recovery broke me. I'll bring you to one of my meetings.
There is meetings in Montreal.
Yes. Well, the only meeting in Quebec is in Montreal. That's just how lucky we are, you and I.
And Eric, where do you live? Do you live nearby? No? Does Eric goes to that meeting?
Yeah, I live 45 minutes away, and it's after work, so I don't always.
It's a big commitment. That's how much you love Smart Recovery.
It is, actually. Yeah, and I do love Smart Recovery. And plus, it is one of our counselors that we had at Heritage that does the meeting in Montreal. So it's a bonus.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It feels like home.
Yes.
So as I was saying, I often say that Smart Recovery broke me because I'm unable to convince myself with my own bullshit anymore. Like, all of the toxic coping mechanism I had are neutralized because I cannot drop out of self-awareness. I see myself and my behaviors, and I cannot blind myself. I cannot shut my eyes. So it become obvious that if I choose to misbehave, well, I choose to misbehave. It did not happen on me. It's not because the Joker had my hands behind my back, or because Satan did what the fuck, like, it's me. My behaviors, it's me.
You're right. You're good.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving you like the synthesis of what SMART is, and you can see there's some inconsistencies and incompatibilities between the first few steps in 12 step, the way that they are written. Like you can adapt it, and as you've mentioned, there is agnostic 12-step as well. Like there's so much more that we don't know that we definitely are curious to learn about. The reason why we started this podcast because our home group, which is smart based, has a lot of steppers around it.
Okay.
And at some time, the lines were getting blurred, and like sponsors were reaching for sponsees with people that just came out of a science-based program. You know, like it became very shady, weird. You know, like
It was confusing.
we
It
took
was
offense in that. I took
confusing.
offense in that.
I was
Okay.
getting confused. That is also why I
Yes.
stopped attending 12-step meetings, because it was confusing the program I was working from Smart. And
Yeah.
Because there's contradiction.
I couldn't do that. I have to be clear, one path. It's in my head. My head knows what it is. I can't deviate. If I start introducing stuff that's a different program, and I actually don't need to do some of the steps because I did them at Heritage. Like inventory
Yeah.
is basically what I did when I did my life story, and I read it to the group, and stuff I did with my therapist and my counselors. There's a lot of steps I've already done. There's a lot of steps I'll never do. But
Yeah. I mean, you know, smart recovery doesn't work for everybody. So somebody that's not going to be going back home and applying those CBT tools to their daily routine, it probably is a good thing for these people to attend a 12-step fellowship if that's going to be something that they will be serious in working into. Because there's nothing worse than going back home and just going back to your old behaviors and not changing anything, not making sobriety a lifestyle, right? So, and that's why I said, like, your program works for you, Kevin, and I will never challenge that. It works for all of the people that stay sober, and we all have a different program. Like Eric's program and mine, even though we come from the same rehab, we don't have the same program, and I think that's beautiful. Because we can talk about it, we can share our tips, but ultimately, I'm not trying to convince him that my way is the way. Which, again, from the experience we've had with 12-steppers, is like, come, I have the solution for you. Like, I see you're confused, young man. Oh, your wife just dumped you. I've been there. Come, take my hand. I'll walk you through the step. Like, it really feels like I'm being recruited in a fucking cult. And I've been around, you know. I've been in a cult. I've been recruiting people as a child. So it's not like I won't see that. If I see that, I can name it. Like, you are fucking trying to sell me something, mister. And I'm saying that with like maybe exaggeration a bit, or I want to keep the podcast funny, but it is what it is. Like I felt like I was a prey. I'm very vulnerable, so you're gonna jump on me and feed me what you think I need to be fed. Yeah.
Wow.
And we've had other steppers that we have discussion with that says, well, this is not 12-step. This is just fucking being a predator. Like, so I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that it in most fellowship, it doesn't work that way.
I'm curious. Have you noticed in your meetings, Caroline, have you noticed that? Like, some people are like that, like almost predator-like?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But not towards you.
No, not towards me. No, that's why I wanted to surround myself with women when I first started the meeting. And, you know, but just to come back on what you were talking about, your rehab that you went, it's just, it looks really, really interesting and stuff, but it's just sad that it's not affordable for more people, you know, because you have to spend 13Ks or 15Ks for, it's sad.
The good, but the good part is that there's some of the recurring meetings that they hold that are open to everyone in the public. So there's 2, maybe 3 meetings. Yeah, so there's 3 meetings a week that anybody can attend. So there's very few, but there's some people in our own group that just came virtually into the groups, stuck in, and actually...
It's probably because they relapsed. Sorry.
No, it's the same as the steppers. If you come back home from therapy and you don't surround yourself with addicts in recovery, you won't make it.
Yeah, people, places, and things has to change.
No, but
Yeah.
also I think Caroline brings up a good point. The way she phrased it is you need to be around people that are talking recovery and sobriety.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah.
work in your program. You need to be around and talk to people that are doing a program too. Because we all lean on each other and we all feed off the success too, right?
Oh yeah. Them, I want everybody to succeed in my group, and I'm like, I need them to succeed.
So
But
let's
that's
go
cool
out of
that
our
you
way.
welcome the outsiders.
Well, yes, outsiders are welcome in 3 of the virtual meetings, and also the meeting in Montreal is open to general public. Like, it has nothing to do with treatment. Like, some people perhaps will go in treatment from attending the Montreal meeting, but there's no link between one or the other, except for the fact, again, that those in-person meetings are also financially supported by this. Yeah, I was just realizing that we didn't touch on that topic, and we were approaching 2 hours already. But did you pick up a sponsor? So the person that brought you in CA, did you become her sponsee and work the step with?
No, she was a friend of mine. We went to meetings together, but I choose a sponsor. It took me, I don't remember. Because I chose him right before I went to therapy. That was during my my relapse. I chose him. Yeah. And my sponsor, but I wanted to redo the steps, some of the steps, but I asked a friend of mine, no one came to me like, I can help you to do the steps. No one came to me. Maybe I was too fucked up. I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
But first of all, I think there's a very important thing here, matter of boundaries, is that you did it once you decided to pick up a sponsor when you were ready, and you were going to rehab, and your plan was already like, it's post-treatment. I want to work my step. I choose my sponsor. So you set your stepping stones for your success after rehab. And again, that's all depends on when you are ready, and when you are especially ready to say, like, I will never use again, or I can never use again, and you accept this. I don't want to is also another very important statement. But a lot of people in treatment that will spend the $13K or whatever that is, like, there's rehabs that are $40K for 30 days. A lot of people come in without the conviction or the desire to stop using, and that to me is fascinating, because they do fine for 30 days. They do great. Like, they work the program.
Want to use normally after. That's why.
Or some people want to go arm reduction. I think that's a very common desire. Like, I want to learn how to drink correctly, with a success rate of 2%. I wouldn't try that. But a lot of people, like, they know they need to get sober, but they're not convinced that they will not be able to use only one. And now I am in control because I've went to therapy. So a lot of people project themselves in the future this way. Other people, like, the medical system has a cure for everything. Okay, so I went to detox, I've been rehab, I've been 30 days, now I'm good. Like, I'm not sick anymore. Accepting that you have a terminal disease that you will carry until you die. That's a lot of radical acceptance for a lot of people, right? So not everybody is ready when they try.
I think that was the difference between us and other people.
Yeah. But that's interesting, Caroline, because the first time you stopped, you succeeded. You were going to meetings, you relapsed, but you kept attending your meetings. You kept your sobriety mindset in some way. You were not, from what I've heard, you were not like going to meetings to lie and pretend you were sober.
Oh no, because I wanted to get sober, I wanted to quit for good. I believed in it, but I wasn't able to. But again, I made the choice to find a place where I felt secure, where I could work on myself, make a life plan, and a plan for when I get out, how I'm gonna work this out and stuff. But I had in mind now, the first time I quit, when I went to detox, I went to a place way more like harm reduction. But I told to my therapist, I told her that I wanted to quit. I didn't want to try to reduce my intakes, But I made my choice. It was a long time before going to therapy because what I've seen around me, that was people dying from it. So I don't want to die. That's why. And I know that it went really, really, really close to a few times. So I know I have no limits. And I don't care if I don't drink anymore. I don't miss it. I don't miss that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I am agnostic, but I'm also believe that I'm alive by the grace of God because I should have died a few times from all these, but it didn't happen. But yeah, 37-year-old, right? That's the common denominator for all three of us. It's a time where we perhaps realize that we might die.
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't stop because I thought I was going to die. No, this time I did. Not at 37.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not really.
Good. I don't know how I do it. It's just really strange.
So 37
but we
is
are all neurodivergent, right?
What, Eric? What do you got?
What do I got?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I don't know. I can tell you this. I'll put it this way. Once I believe in something or I accept something, it is concrete for me. It is fact. It's a done deal, and my brain accepts it and never really questions it again. And that's how I stay sober. Somehow I did, but I have to. I can't smell a hint of a lie. If I smell a hint of a lie, that's why I can't do 12 steps. If I smell a hint of a lie, then there'll be doubt. And if I have doubt, I can't do anything. That is my fuck up. My brain that goes woo. Is if I smell.
Well, I think it's important to mention that you've done religious studies, right?
In college, so I could argue better. It's not the same
thing. Yeah, but it learned you about the bullshit in scriptures, right? So you can smell a lie because you learn how. But all jokes aside, like to answer your question, Caroline, we're both ADHD, that's for sure. I've shared with you that there's definitely a lot of indicators that I am on the spectrum to certain degrees. I'm a firm believer that a diagnosis personally for me would not serve a great purpose because, well, my functioning right now and my understanding of myself, like I don't feel stuck, but I understand that I'm wired differently than somebody else. I might seek for a diagnosis in the future, but for anything out of the DSM-5, I don't really believe that having a diagnosis serves a treatment purpose. It's more like a label purpose, but that's also a belief. It might not be a fact. That's my belief system.
Yeah.
And Eric, I think, of course, you go ahead. You were saying, Caroline?
I was saying, if you don't feel the need to get a diagnosis, but that's fine.
Okay, so now I'll answer kind of your question. I feel the same. At this point, I've lived with it so long, I don't see the point of spending any money trying to figure this, get a name, get a label. For me, I've already explained how my sobriety works. It's never shutting up. It's talking to my therapist, sharing with the people that are closest to me that are in recovery, and continuing to learn about my emotions, because really what it is about me is identifying my emotions. So once I identify my emotions, my brain takes care of everything else. Once I identify it. Once I identify an emotion, I go, and then boom. The next time it comes up, my brain already is figured out before I even think about it how to manage it differently. I don't have to plan it. It is that way. It's like I do it in my sleep or something. I don't understand. So I don't have to
There's a
want
reason. There's a reason why SMART is self-management recovery training, right?
Once you learn how, it's amazing.
Yeah. Your brain actually picks up how to manage it. You don't have to think about it. It's not like you have to force yourself into doing something. It becomes second nature after some time. But yeah, I'm in early recovery. Like for me, my post-treatment plan is 24 months. For 24 months, I have several milestones for my mental health, for my well, I'm not going to go into details, but like I consider myself still on the recovery path, and I'm not healthy, right? That being said, I'm going to be in recovery for my entire life. That's no debating. But perhaps in 2 years or in 3 years, I will find myself stuck, and actually perhaps that at this point I will have to seek for a diagnosis for whatever mental or neurological pathology that I may have. But today, to say the least, I have enough on my plate that I don't really feel the need to be bothered about why am I so weird? Because I'm weird.
Embrace it. But
That's actually
I
one of the things
waited,
that I'm
I
working on
think,
the
2
most.
or
So.
3 years before getting evaluated. Yeah, I was at 3 years of sobriety when I got evaluated. Yeah, I waited because it took me time to just let my brain come, after many years of using and to know myself a little bit better and, use the tools.
Yeah.
But I got stuck. And now my psychologist helps me a lot with identify emotions. I still struggle because, as I said, I'm kind of colorblind of emotion, not only in myself but
And,
on other people's face.
and that's normal because you're autistic. That
Yeah,
is who you are. And that's why the diagnosis definitely is a relief. It must be a relief for you because, well, you don't have to force yourself into like, what's wrong with me? Why cannot I not identify emotions? Well, there is a reason why it is this
yeah.
way. And in that context, I would also feel relief from a diagnosis.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I sometimes find myself like not reading social cues, especially when people are hitting on me. I never pick it up, and it's frustrating. Missed opportunities. um, Other than that,
That's
I
the
think I'm
story
doing
of my
a
life.
good job with emotion. Oh yeah,
That's the
we have that in
story
common.
of my life.
But, I've always worked with the public. I'm either managing a team or I'm in sales or project management. I'm good with humans. Like I'm good to understand and actually anticipate behaviors from other humans. As much as I sucked at that for myself, like zero ability to manage myself, don't believe I have issues socially, like at least not more than the average people, because, well, it's hard to be a human, but
Mhm.
I don't think that that's my problem. But it might be the case. I don't know. I'm still just very early in learning about myself.
You're way more social than I am. I have a problem with social situations because I don't have a
I
filter most of the time, and it's either I shut up or I don't have a filter. So
Yeah. Well, I'm facilitating your social encounters, right? I
yeah,
think we
and on
collaborate
mine
well
too
on that.
because
Say we've had a very long chat tonight, and it's absolutely amazing. I think we have a fantastic podcast recorded, but I will have, of course, to end that great pleasure. Caroline, anything you feel like we have not discussed, or any last word you think are important to be heard? The mic is yours.
Oh my God,
Close us
nothing comes in my mind right now. Sometimes, most of the time, it comes after. So maybe when
Yeah.
I'm going to bed, I'm going to think, oh, I forgot to talk about that and this and that. It always comes after.
Yeah. So that's why you have an open invitation for a second episode, so we can go into the topics and
Maybe
C'est
maybe
comme-
we could do
this
some
is-
meetings together since we're all actually around the same city, and then we could talk about
Yeah.
it.
You live nearby. Where do you live, Eric?
Valleyfield.
I feel.
Ouais.
C'est
Ben, c'est 45 minutes quand même, là. C'est pas à côté non plus, puis les rues de Montréal, puis,
There's
tu
a
sais,
train or
construction.
something.
I'm gonna have to translate you, Eric.
Well,
Yes, there's a
you know
train.
how.
There's a train, but it's stop at Vaudreuil.
Okay, stop at home.
It's like
Okay.
20 minutes. Like if I go to Vaudreuil, Eric can pick me up in 20 minutes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't drive? No.
I don't. I will have to. No, Eric does.
I
Okay,
like
so he
driving.
drives. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. That's what I do when I don't have my son with me.
So just maybe to close us up, that's a good thing you've mentioned, Caroline, for us to go and crash some meetings, because that's the whole concept as well of the podcast. We're not 12 steppers, but we are 12 step crashers. We're willing to attend any meeting at least once.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to walk the talk because we haven't really attended meetings outside of our own group in a
Your
while.
own group.
So,
Maybe the
yeah.
secular meeting. Maybe we can try the secular AA meeting. That's on
Absolutely.
Tuesday night or Monday night. I don't remember. I went there one only. That was few months ago. So there is someone who shares for 15 minutes, and then the rest of the meeting is a discussion. So I like this kind of meeting with this, so everyone can speak for a few minutes.
Eric,
It sounds cool.
doesn't that sound familiar?
It does.
It sounds like a
actually.
crosstalk meeting.
Yes,
It sounds
does.
like our meetings.
Yes, it sounds good too. We're definitely gonna go.
Okay,
And we'll bring you the smart. Here's the deal.
yeah. But I'm curious about your, I definitely want to know more about your program.
On this, I think it's time to go to bed. At least for me, I'm past my bedtime.
Oh, shit.
I wake up at 6:30
Yeah.
every morning, so. What? Did I miss something?
I am not past my bedtime. I have trouble going to bed these days. So.
Past my bedtime, but I don't work
So
tomorrow.
insomnia is your bestie.
Yeah, these days, yes. And I love Eric just roasted me because I'm committed to an honest life. And that was a blatant lie. It's not my
Okay.
bedtime.
Sorry
But
about that.
it's time to go.
No
It's time.
filter. No filter, man.
It's time to close up still. Kevin, thank you for being with us. It has been a great discussion, and we'll definitely have you back on the podcast and perhaps also attend meetings in the real life. Eric, any last word before we close this up?
No, just we'll wrap this up. And Caroline, thank you very much for telling your story. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be able to relate to your story. I know there was a lot of parts of it that I did, especially the way, especially some of your usage and your maintenance. Yeah, and thanks a lot for showing up, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to have you on the show.
All right.
Yes.
Good night, everyone. Like this, Eric. Like this.
It never looks right. There.